Hey, there's corn out of the ground. Let's go. So first thing I do when I come out to a field, I'm gonna come out, take a stand count. We are in 30-inch rows. So I'm gonna measure 17 foot 5 inches because that is the length for 1/1000th of an acre. Count the plants, multiply by 1,000. The other thing I'm gonna do here, see here, any place where we are missing a plant, I'm going to dig through there, determine why we're missing it, if it's just slow, if it's a skip, and then I will also dig up the healthy ones to make sure that they're healthy below as well as above. So I will evaluate some of these good looking plants. So here we've got our seed, we have our radical root, we've got our seminal root starting. From here to here, that's our mesocotyle. That is the umbilical cord to this young plant, so that if it's not yet photosynthesizing, making its own food, it can still draw water and nutrients and carbohydrates from the seed and the soil. This little bump here, if you can see that, that is where that crown is going to be set, where the first nodal roots are going to shoot from. This kind of little flappy part right here, that was the coleoptile. That was the tissue that was wrapped over and protecting this first true leaf. And once it popped through the surface, it burst open and it allowed this first leaf to come out. So when we're looking at this here, we want to make sure that there's nothing chewing on these first roots. We want to make sure that the mesocotyle is nice and white and the leaves are green and continuing to come out. So far, so good. So here we should have one or two plants. We should have a plant right in here. Let's find out why we're missing this guy. Here we go. Looks like, here I chop him up a little bit. So we did have a shoot starting. I think I chopped it off, so he must have just been a late emerger. So that field of corn looks pretty good. That was planted about 10 days ago. It only took it about 6 days to start poking through just because it was so hot. It will typically take about 110 to 120 GDUs to get that corn seedling to emerge. What I really want to check out is some beans that we planted April 27th before that long extended period of rain, especially with the hot weather that followed after. I am expecting there to be some crusting, so we'll take a look at what we got. Oh, it doesn't look good. They've been out here a long time and not seeing any rows. So mostly what I am worried about in these early planted both corn and beans is a crust forming. So what happened was we planted in April and then we had an extended period of wet, and then we had an extended period of extremely hot and dry. So what's going to happen is you're going to have those raindrops coming down. They're going to dislodge those small soil particles, and then they're going to try and drain, and they're going to end up clogging all of the pores in the top layer of soil. And then you're going to get hot and dry, and it's going to bake that top layer of soil, keeping the underneath still slightly moist. But you've got a brick sitting on top of that seed, and that seed has to figure out how to grow out of it. So let's take a look and see how bad these beans are. It's not good. So here is supposed to be a row of beans, but what we're seeing here is the fracture from where the openers were. Now, these are better than they were a couple days ago. We do have some coming out here, but it's so sporadic, they're just not going to make a stand. So let's dig in here, see what we got. The way a bean plant grows is completely different than a corn plant, where a corn plant is going to shoot something out of the ground, whereas a soybean seed, these cotyledons were once the seed, and they swell up with water and they shoot this down. And then they get this crook here, and they're going to pull and pop the cotyledons up out of the soil. So a lot of times you'll get this arch up out of the soil, and then they're going to pull and they're going to pop this up. What can happen in some of these cases is you see this crack here, especially if you're a little wet when you plant, you're going to get this furrow, doesn't close all the way, and then we got really hot and dry, and it turned this to concrete. This is extremely hard soil right here. So what can happen is the pressure of this guy trying to pull those cotyledons up out of the ground, they can actually break those off. Now, if you have a scenario where you're breaking off some of the, that neck is breaking off some of these cotyledons, you're gonna wanna take a look at the growing points right next to it. So you're gonna have these first leaves here that might be intact yet. But if you guys remember, after the freeze last year, we had some of these cotyledons freeze off and some of the growing points freeze off. But there are these little axillary buds here at the base of these cotyledons that can actually still continue to grow. So make sure you're taking into account the number of plants that are going to end up being viable. We've actually got more beans right here than in most places, but if I can pop this out, like I said, the ground is really hard right here. Okay, you can see that sidewall right there and just how hard, especially this top layer is, but not only that, but how dense this layer is right here. It would just take a lot of push for these beans to try and grow through here. And they're trying. Now, especially like in planted beans, with any population usually that you're running with these planted beans, you're gonna have enough of them here, and usually they can kind of help each other push up through a crust. But in a situation like this, where their emergence is so sporadic, they aren't going to be able to help push each other, help their neighbors out very much. So if you had anything planted early, do yourself a favor, just go out and check on it, because I'm finding that this crust is there in a lot of the early planted stuff, or in a lot of the stuff that was planted maybe a little bit too tacky, and then got all of that heat and dry weather. So if you have any other questions, call, text, or email.